Hello everyone, welcome back to Lean. This is day 3 with a guy that is not qualified in any such way to teach you Lean. Now, I want to before we go back to we're going to go into new content, I want to go back and talk about this definition that we created last time, which was trans new, and basically that used the eq.trans and which took arguments a, b, and the symmetry of CB, which turned that into BC, AB, BC gave us AC, and we actually made that theorem last time. But I want to talk about some of these arguments up here. I don't think I explained that at all. So basically when we're kind of defining what's going to go in it, we have to use the curly braces because these are basically mere arguments. And when we have our proofs, those go in just the parentheses. If we actually try to swap them out, it'll look fine at the start, right? Lean just loving it right now. And it turns into this. But the problem is we're actually going to get a tight mismatch when we use it, because now it's expected to have type, but remember we're actually putting in propositions, so we really need to use the curly braces for these. And I just wanted to go back there and clear that up. It's not really important how that really works, but just know that if you're using these arguments, curly braces, when you're putting in proofs, or just basically variables, values, propositions, etc., you need to use the parentheses. Otherwise, Lean's just gonna complain when you go to use it, and nobody needs that. So today we're going to go into tactics. And tactics are good. It's really helpful to just see how things play out. Because let's say let's make a new lemma that we've used 0 equals 0 a lot, right? So let's just go ahead and do that. 0 equals 0. We have to bind it, so let's just go ahead and bind it to dot refl. Oops. I mean, we could also do just reflexive, but for what we're gonna do, let's do eq.refl. So we already know that works. We perfectly know that works. But we can actually do this in a slightly different way. And these are tactics. It's a tactic-based proof. So we're gonna do the same thing. Let's call it 0, 0 prime. And, whoops. And now when we go ahead and bind it to something, we're going to use a tactic. And tactics have a begin and an end. And what you put in there is how you're actually going to prove this. So in this case, up here we used eq.refl 0. So we need to somehow apply eq.refl of 0 to this. So how are we gonna do that? Well, fortunately, there's actually an apply expression, and we are just gonna throw eq.refl into it. And now when we want to go ahead and check that, Lean absolutely loves us. Loves us. Thank you, Lean. So what have we done? So we started with our basic parts. We have our variable, our type, our bind statement, or syntax, I guess. And then these are all the statements to get this. By the end, we want end to be this, or whatever's at the end to be this. So we've just applied the principle of the reflexive property using 0 to this right here. Now, what this is great for is that we can actually open up a tactic window, and you're going to do that by using Control, Shift, and Enter, and that's going to bring up lean message. It's a tactic state. So when we're in begin, you have a turnstile, and that's what we're trying to get after. It's basically what we want. And in this case, we want 0 equals 0 because that's what we have defined right there. And so when we go to apply, we're basically just applying eq.ruffle to get to that. And by the end, we have no goals left, right? So our goal here is to get 0 equals 0. We've applied this and we finished off our goal. We got our 0 equals 0, which is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Now, I believe what you can also do is if you don't want to just do that, there's actually a longer way. You can use some have expressions. So let's just say have z equals z, or bind that to 0, eq.ruffle 0. Now we have this new one. And so we could basically do this as well. So what have is it's basically your definition. You're defining a variable and you're binding it to this, which is 0 equals 0, right? So when we look at our tactic state, suddenly we have a new thing. We didn't define it before. It's not even up here. It's just something special that we've created in our tactic. So now we're able to, our goal is still 0 equals 0, but now we have a proof, or just an object, that 0 equals 0. And when we go to exact it, actually you can actually read it right here. It exacts the proof term to solve the main goal. This is our proof term. Here's our goal. Does it match? Yes, it does. And when we check it, it still works. So that's basically what tactics do. They're not particularly necessary, but it can make life a lot easier, especially when you're just trying to read it later. Plus, when you actually have the steps, sometimes you can figure out, oh, what do I need to get next, right? And that's super nice. All right, so now that we've basically started tactics, we'll go back to that a lot later on, because trust me, there's a lot you can do with tactics, and I don't even think we should really go into it too much. So let's jump right into true and false. So we know that propositions are generally like true or false. Like, you know, this is a proposition, and that's obviously true, right? So true is basically an axiom. Like, we know true is true, right? True is known to be true. So what if we want to just make a theorem? All right, so let's have a theorem. We'll call it, I don't even know, T for true. And we're going to state that it's true, which is a proposition. Remember, it's not a Boolean because TT is the Boolean. I think we have it in day 1. Yeah, it's a Boolean. But we used a sorry because we haven't really proved it yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to use true dot intro, and that basically just evaluates to true. And it's essentially like our axiom for this. We know true is always true, so we can prove it. And when we just go ahead, we're just gonna go ahead and check this. Yep, so we know that T is true. Now, we could also use this doing a tactic, and we're just gonna go ahead and do that right now. Let's say we have, I don't know, let's just say, let's call it a lemma this time. I don't know if we're gonna prove anything with it later, but, so we're gonna do the same thing. And now we have our tactic. So if you want to try to figure it out on your own, I believe you should be able to. You can go ahead, but we're going to keep going. So what you need is a begin, an end, and now we got to fill in all the innards. So we're going to apply true.intro. Right? And there we go. So we're looking for something that's going to make it true. We know true.intro is always going to give us true. And that finishes off our goals. We have no goals left, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. I just want to state up here, if you use more than one statement each time, you do need to use a comma after each of them, because Lean is really nice how it lets you use white space. That's why we don't have to just put everything on one line. Like I could put this on the second line and it would still be perfectly happy. So I would just keep that in mind. So yeah, that was super easy, right? But what about false, right? That doesn't really make sense. What if we had just F? It was false, right? See, let's use a sorry, right? Is there a false dot intro? Oh no. Oh, there isn't. Well, that's not good. We have no false intro. And, you know, like, why would that be? Well, how could you do that, though? You can't make false true. You're, like, contradicting the rules of the world. True is, like, trivially provable. But false can't be proved. Right? Just, it wouldn't make sense. When you make false true, then like you start getting like fake news and stuff. I don't want to go there. That is not my realm. So, but what if we just wanted to break the rules of the world and make things false? Right? We're just gonna make things false. But they're gonna be true, because otherwise Lena will yell at us. So we know that true.intro basically uses an axiom. An axiom that true means true. Alright, so to declare an axiom, basically we just say axiom. Let's call this false, because we had true before. I want to say that's false. That's a proposition. And now we have declared that false, like truth could be false. Or, I mean, I guess false things can be true. That's what we've done here. We've just told Lean to shut up and just anything that is possible is now possible. So if we want to prove that 0 equals 1, right? We could now use a new thing called false elem to help us with this. Now false elem needs some sort of object. We can actually check that here. See, so we need something to go into it, and that makes it false. So we're going to use our axiom here, right? And suddenly, we are able to prove that 0 equals 1, which is ridiculous and absurd, but our axiom allows us to do so because now false things are now true. Which is honestly kind of messed up, but just accept it now because that is what we have done. So you can make a lot of different axioms, but just keep in mind that this is why axioms are pretty dangerous, because if you implement axioms in the wrong way, you start getting really weird things where you never expected them. So like if you ever get just weird math in your calculations later on, just note that you probably defined something badly, and that's probably what's going on. So basically, we can now prove that true is equal to false, right? So we have a theorem, T equals F, true is equal to false. And you're like, how could that be? But false elem makes that true. And that's why axioms are dangerous. Because now we just proved true is equal to false. We can go ahead and check that. And Lean doesn't complain. True is now equal to false. So just want to make sure you guys keep that in mind. You can do some pretty crazy things, but just be careful. Don't make true equals false ever. Just know that you can actually do that if you wanted to. So what do we do today? So we better understand how these are defined, right? We've looked at tactics. Remember that you can open this window using Control, Shift, and Enter. If you're on Windows, I'm sure it's Command, Shift, Enter if you're on a Mac. And then we've looked at axioms and truth. All right, guys, take care. Hope you learned something. Again, take it with a grain of salt. I am not a professional, but hope you have a nice day.